Hello and welcome to this edition of Africa Speaks. You are watching us from Nairobi, in case you're tuned in live from outside of Kenya. My name is Doreen Biira, and today on the show, our major focus is on the role of cartoonists on the African continent. Have they told the African story to your satisfaction? We'd like to hear from you, and our hashtag today is Africa Speaks. And you can share your views as well using the Twitter handle at KTN News or at Doreen Biira. And in studio with me, I have the men that you only get to see in caricatures, if I might put it that way. So with me in studio, I have one that I would only refer to as Mado. And I also have Vic Ndula, and I have Gams. Those are the pen names that you see in caricatures or in the editorials where you normally see cartoons. But joining us via Skype is Jean Regis Nduwimana, who is joining us via Skype, and he's going to be telling us how cartoons or caricatures are perceived in Burundi. So you might want to look out for that. And on our wall over here, I'm sure you can recognize some faces. Either you've seen them somewhere that is not on television, but in the papers. And here we go. I think the only person I recognize is this person, but I don't really seem to know her name. And then there's all of those faces. I think we only have one female cartoonist in the East African region. So we're going to be focusing specifically on our cartoonists and whether or not they tell the African story. Do they have the freedom of expression, and can they just draw anything? Would also like to know from you when it comes to cartoons. Would you take this up as a profession? Use the hashtag Africa Speaks. But first, let's take a look at some of the stories making headlines across the African continent. And Uganda's national resistance movement has started a massive recruitment drive ahead of the party's primaries scheduled for later this year. The exercise was, however, marred by a lot of low turnout. Let's take a look at that story from Uganda.
Independent presidential aspirants allegedly facing the party witch hunt include Elton Joseph Mabirizi, Dr. Deul Chamzi, Robert Mutono, Charles Rwangabale, Ntege William, Job Odong, among others.
Voter number, national ID number.
At the height of the accusations is a crafted plan to suffocate the interest facilitated by intimidation to commit harm on electorates willing to pen signatures on their nomination forms.
If you sign for anybody else, whatever will happen to you is your business. And even when the voting comes, you must only vote for NRM. And that one has happened. I have evidence.
There looks to be state-sponsored criminals who move around to discourage people from signing our forms. I've faced this example from many places.
Whoever person you go to, he wants money, because the government has told them that you cannot give out what you have or any free service without giving money.
The party, NRM, has dismissed claims as baseless.
We have not and we shall not instruct any Ugandan not to sign for anybody, a person of his choice. We cannot do that.
The presidential aspirants say the fraud system has delayed fulfillment of collecting signatures and now ask the Electoral Commission to extend the deadline.
Asking the Electoral Commission to extend the period for the collection of these signatures, maybe by another 3 weeks, because otherwise the current time period cannot allow us to traverse 75 districts and be able to get these signatures.
The aspirants also disapprove of illegal militias as bring tough times ahead of 2016.
If these people are not aware, people are worried, people are asking what is next. The other one is training militias, and the other one is the Lukwago, and the group are training the protection group, as they claim.
Their numerous queries include disapproving Electoral Commission's decision to demand for a scientific medical checkup of.
They simply come in because we don't sell these forms, and they want to pick and go. Some of them are not even able to jump on a border with their forms. They walk all the way.
Calling us jokers. He's a sick man. His sickness goes beyond his understanding. That's why he can afford to talk the way he talks. He doesn't know us.
Some of them are jokers. Others don't even have the popularity to earn them the signatures.
He works for a system which is very corrupt, and therefore whatever he says is also corrupt. Because first of all, in a democracy, you don't even put the restrictions they have put on us now.
Sam Ibanda Mugabe, NBS.
And Uganda is going to the polls next year, and we will be keeping tabs on what exactly is happening there as they head towards the elections. Let's now take a look at the migrant crisis, and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker is due to announce plans to tackle Europe's worst migrant crisis since World War II. Under the proposals, 120,000 asylum seekers will be distributed among European Union member countries with binding quotas. In a separate development, Australia, which has been under pressure to do more to help displaced people, has announced plans to take in more Syrian refugees. The government said it would accept 12,000 Syrian refugees from persecuted minorities. But also there is a bigger number of refugees coming in from going to Europe from sub-Saharan Africa. Take a look.
They fled war, selling their clothing shop and home to set out in search of a better future. Iraqi refugees Ahmad and Alia are among the 350,000 people who've started on the long journey to Europe since the beginning of the year. After crossing from Turkey to Greece in a boat with their 4-month-old baby, Adam, they travelled to the border with Macedonia to catch this train towards Serbia. Ahmad says they first decided to flee Baghdad after a bomb went off in the restaurant where they were eating, just 10 days after they got engaged.
We were sitting in a restaurant just having dinner, and all the glass of the restaurant exploded in our faces. We decided to leave Iraq.
The refugees travel in large groups for safety, their journey continuing through Serbia on foot and by bus. Ahmad and Alia are hoping to reach Cologne in Germany, where he has a sister, or maybe Holland, where they both have family.
I would like to continue my studies. I reached a certain level, but the situation in Iraq became very unstable, and it became impossible for me to continue my studies. Hopefully we will be able to make true even just a part of our dreams.
Hungary has built a barbed wire fence along its border to keep the refugees out, but the couple cross with the help of a smuggler, narrowly escaping arrest. The stress of living like a fugitive has stopped Alia's milk, but they're risking all for their baby's future. They borrow money from an uncle to cross by train into Austria, and in Vienna there's finally some relief.
It was very tough for us, terrifying. With the exhaustion from the sea, the risks to my life, the life of my son and my wife, going through Macedonia, then Serbia, all the things we faced. It's wrong that with just one mistake, after everything that we went through, you might just have to go back to square one.
7 countries in as many days, a journey costing €9,000. There are no cheers and applause the day they reach Munich train station, as police stop them and take them to a makeshift facility for registration. They haven't made it to Cologne, and because of the large numbers arriving here, it could be months before the family has a place they can call home. But at least they're safe for now.
All right, now looking at it from the African perspective, we're now joined by Rosbel Kagomire, who is a former communications officer at the International Organization on Migration. Rosbel, why exactly do you think more and more people from sub-Saharan Africa continue to leave the African continent heading towards Europe?
When we talk about migrant deaths in the Mediterranean, especially African migrants, it's a mixed bag of different people from different countries. If you look at the statistics now, top of the arrivals in Europe is Syria, Somalia, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and another country, Eritrea, that features on top of the countries that are sending migrants into Europe. So when we talk about why are people crossing, it's really mixed, because some of the people are economic migrants, especially from West African countries like Senegal, the Gambia, and Mali, and also a bit of Nigeria. But it's also people fleeing conflicts and wars and oppression who actually are asylum seekers, like they would have any protection in any country. So the reasons why people are fleeing African countries and going to Europe are very varied, but it also comes to security and the politics, oppression, but also economic reasons. We have a large youth percentage of which people are unemployed, and the continent is experiencing such a big young population, and if these people are not getting jobs, they are going to seek them elsewhere, and many people are willing to go to Europe to get these jobs instead of staying at home and be unemployed for many, many years.
Thanks a lot, Rosebel Kagumide, right there, speaking to us from Uganda. And she's a former communications officer at the International Organization on Migration. And she says the major reason as to why more Africans continue to leave the continent for Europe is because of insecurity, politics, oppression, as well as the fact that we have a young, huge population on the African continent. And so the levels of unemployment are so high. Now, it's that time where we get into our major discussion here on Africa Speaks. And today our major focus is on cartoonists on the African continent. For a long time, a lot of people have not really taken cartoonists that seriously because they think the satire that surrounds their work is probably supposed to just bring out the humorous side of events that happen around the African continent. But this has been changing over time. We're now seeing cartoonists as well getting into humanitarian work, and they are also fighting for causes. So we have political editorial cartoonists, we have those who are into humanitarian work, and now we also have female cartoonists on the African continent as well. And while we might not have managed to have Celeste, who is a female cartoonist, on the show today, she did send in her work. And in studio with me, I think I'm going to allow the gentlemen here to introduce themselves to be on the safe side. Though I know them, we have Mado, we have Vic Ndula, and we have Gams. But everybody would like to know your real names. So I'll start with you, Mado.
Sure. I mean, well, once a month I use the name Paul Kelemba. Once a month because that's when I go to the bank. It's not a very popular name as it is. I mean, everybody really knows me as Mado today.
Yeah. Okay. And next to you is Vic Ndula.
My full names are Victor Ndula. So I decided to shorten them. Victor Ndula is a bit of a mouthful, so I said Vic Ndula.
Yeah.
It's too late to change it. So
you're the only one with two names as a cartoonist.
Yeah, Vic Ndula.
Right.
Yeah.
And Gams?
For me, the name that appears in my national ID is Eric Jacob Ngamau.
Eric Jacob Ngamau.
Ngamau, yes.
So, of course, everyone would like to know, was this something that you always wanted to do, or did you go to school to become a cartoonist, or was it self-taught, and why did you decide to take it up as a profession?
Okay, probably, I mean, I won't talk for them. These days, actually, the centers that train artists to become illustrators or cartoonists and so on. But in my time, that was nil. It didn't exist. So it's for me, it's inborn. Started as a joke. Then I crack jokes for a living these days. As it is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Victor, was it the same for you? Or Vic Ndula, was it the same for you?
Yeah, almost the same story. The time when I joined the profession, there was no formal training. I was actually mentored by Akina Paul Kelemba. And it was difficult because their standards were way up there. Some of us are starting out. And over time, I've just developed the skill. So no formal training in cartooning. I think it's more of who you are than what you can be taught at school.
All right. Gams?
Pretty much the same. I belong to the third generation of cartoonists, which is
the third generation?
Yes.
What is that supposed to say? That you're among the youngest cartoonists we have in the country today?
No, there's another fourth generation.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
I also didn't go to school to study art. I didn't go, but I also had this passion. I used to draw, practice a lot, and ended up being a cartoonist.
All right. So shortly, we're also going to be sharing the views of citizens of Kenya and what they think about cartoonists on the African continent. But before we can even get to that, we'd like to take a look at some of the work that our cartoonists have done. And probably we're going to now move on and take a look at some of their work. But this caricature that you're seeing right here is that of the cartoonists that we have, especially in Kenya and the East African region. And we're going to spread out and go as well to South Africa and hear what South Africans as well have to say about cartoonists. But let's now take a look at some of the other work that you've done. You've done work regarding third terms on the African continent. What exactly drives the mind of a cartoonist when they're, say, drawing the caricature for the next day? Mado?
Actually, my artwork is a little different because Vic and Gams actually do editorial cartoons. I do full-page composite feature. So there's tiny spots here and there all over the place that, that I do. But however, I comment on politics and about, I mean, what's trending right now really is about third terms. That is Ndula's cartoon. I think we should really say something about that because there's a guy there who, I mean, who's been clinging onto power all these years. Apparently doesn't want to go away, and
he's drunk in it. He's drunk in power.
He's actually drinking it.
But I think Vic Ndula, probably you can explain to us what exactly that previous caricature was all about, or how exactly you actually brought that out, and what message you were trying to put across for people on the African continent.
Yeah, this cartoon was after the Obama visit, and it was very interesting because when he went to the AU and had a summit, he again lectured the African presidents. Most of them who want to do the third term were there, with the exception of probably a few guys. And I was just trying to figure out in my mind what happened in the back, behind the scenes, what conversations they were having. They're telling each other that since we like taking absolute power, which is an alcoholic brand, why not? Let's keep doing it. And we see Mugabe totally wasted because he's been there the longest, I think.
Well, it hasn't been there the longest, but yes, he's among the longest serving African leaders. And I think he's one of the most popular as well when it comes to the longest serving leaders.
The most, I think.
And so there's that gentleman in a red tie over there.
What if I will say this?
Is he the one who is trying to be, you know?
Well, no, really, actually, what happened is, we cartoonists, despite being, government critics by nature, we loved what President Uhuru told his Ugandan counterpart. That we've got laws here and we've got definite term limits, and nobody can really change it.
Right.
So,
okay, so you probably also bring out the stories of what's happening on the African continent. Let's move on now to the next one and see. There you go. That looks like the East African community. But Vic Ndula, this is your work. What was this about?
Again, I was thinking that we're having a contagion of third limits. Things started in DR Congo with Kabila. Then I said spreading to Burundi, Museveni and Kagame lately. And I tried to be respectful, but I think we all get a cold at some point, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about when you get a cold. And I was just trying to show that it's spreading really fast. But I'm glad it's not come to Kenya yet.
It hasn't come to Kenya yet, but time will tell. 2017, and then we have 2022. You know, you never know what's going to happen there. And then there's this one.
Yes.
South Sudan.
Yes. There have been so many peace initiatives. I think the thing that is being talked about a lot is how they like to go to plum and posh hotels in Ethiopia and drop per diem, you know. So they like to prolong the process and never really get to talk about peace. I really hope that this one that they signed will hold. So let's see how it goes.
Well, there were already issues about insincerity when it comes to the other party. That Dr. Riek Machar was complaining that the other party was not being sincere with the agreement that was signed. And then we also have this one as well. That looks like Jose Kabila of the DRC.
Yeah.
What was that about? Because the hat looks like Mobutu Sese
Exactly. and this would probably relate a lot with the older guys like Mado. They know more about Mobutu. But you know, a mirror reflects really who you are. And sometimes we want to see what we want to see, but the mirror doesn't lie. So I think when he looked in the mirror, he saw himself for what he really is. I think it's disappointing that the younger presidents really taking up what these guys were doing and maybe perfecting it, you know, because I didn't see a difference between him and Mobutu.
Yeah.
History just is repeating
and
itself.
his father either.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
And now there's also this one as well, which also takes us back to South Sudan, is it?
Yes, yes.
Is that a ballot box?
No, that's Salva Kiir.
Okay.
He's supposed to be signing the peace agreement. And see, the way I understood is that the world was forcing him to sign it.
Yes.
He verbalized it, said that he doesn't want to sign it, he doesn't think that it's going to work, it's not good for one party of South Sudan, but he signed it. So I was just trying to get behind the scenes. We probably didn't see the gun being held behind his back.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly what happened.
All right. And now let's, before we can even get into Celeste's work, who is the only female cartoonist that we have, I think, across the East African region, let's talk about freedom of expression. For cartoonists like yourselves, do you think sometimes you also have to observe the electronic rules or ethic rules for journalism while you are drawing these caricatures? Have you crossed boundaries at some point? Gams, probably I'll start with you.
Okay. With coming with the electronic platform, I think it calls a lot on individual self-censorship. I would say the limit is you're supposed to limit. Of course, there are some limitations. It calls upon, it boils down to individual taste. Of course, you can't go doing like some ethical considerations, going that everybody has access, even kids, to internet. So I think it boils down to your individual taste. And yeah.
Okay. And very shortly, we are going to try and connect to the other citizens from Burundi as well to give us a perspective on what exactly happens in Burundi, because earlier I had a conversation with Jean Regis Nduwimana, who is a media analyst in Burundi, and he says sometimes when you draw the president, you know, with a big head and a small body, that is a problem. And actually he's on the line, he's joining us now via Skype. Jean, thank you so much for joining us. Earlier you did mention that there's some rules that govern drawing cartoons in Burundi. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, as you said, in Burundi, the authorities, especially people in the government, they are not ready for cartoons, for such kind of communication. That's what we experienced a couple of years. So now it's a big issue for a cartoonist to draw up that big head of a president and a small bodies like that, and the way that you guys, the guys do it. So it's like an insult against the president, or against whoever is drawn. So the problem is people, especially the presidency, ministers, those guys, they are not ready for such communication. That's the big problem. So today, what is we're experiencing now is that cartoonists are doing self-censorship. They can't no more draw such political, they expose their political view using cartoon.
Been any sort of arrests that have been made when it comes to the cartoonists that you have in Burundi? And if yes, why exactly have they been arrested?
No, we haven't yet arrested. We haven't yet experienced any case of a journalist arrested for that. But there are some traits, personal traits. Like the time I was preparing this interview, I talked to one of cartoonists. He said, "I haven't yet experienced any trait that's going to tell me I'm going to be arrested. But in my newsroom, we decided not to draw these kind of political cartoons to avoid problem with the government, because you know journalists have a problem with government, so they avoid that kind of cartoon."
Well, thank you so much, Jean. We do appreciate the information relayed to us in that regard. And so there you go. In Burundi, it's almost not accepted for you to even draw the president with a big head. I think it was the same thing during President Amin's time, back in the day in the 1970s. In fact, you were not even allowed to draw cartoons of him doing anything very weird, or anything satirical was not allowed in the papers. Have you gone through the same, Madel?
Obviously, I mean, we also could not draw President Kenyatta one, Jomo Kenyatta, in those years. I mean, I wasn't in the papers then. I was waiting in the wings. There were cartoonists like Terry Haas at the time. He was doing, besides having a publication of his own, he did some editorial cartoons for the Daily Nation. And that's how actually it opened up doors for editorial cartoons in this country. He really focused on social affairs, I mean, community and whatever. In fact, the highest ranking politician he drew in those years was the village chief. But that has changed over the years.
Yes.
I mean, President Moi was also a tricky one. I mean, you couldn't touch him for many years until somewhere about 23 years ago, 23, 24 years ago, when we boldly came out and issued caricatures of him. But it has been a process. And this process, again, is normally very difficult, rather different per country. I mean, the West has gone through its stuff. I mean, it's no longer a big deal to caricature their topmost leaders, the ultimate leaders. Kenya has gone through its process. Now it's easy to draw the president. I mean, but echoing what he said, we still have, I mean, per individual, we have ceilings. I mean, we know our limits. I mean, the limits are everywhere, even driving a car.
Yes.
I mean, there's a limit to how fast you can go.
All right.
So we know that.
Okay. And now we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we are also going to find out how are our cartoonists trying to remain relevant in a world where we are seeing the digital age taking over just about everything. And also we're going to speak to them about their favorite work. If they are into specific causes as cartoonists, don't go too far. You're watching Africa Speaks. Can you go to Gums's work? Gums. Your caricatures somewhere online. We can get the whatever. Can I have the HDMI cable? HDMI cable. Welcome back. You're watching Africa Speaks, and my name is Doreen Biira. We are looking at our African cartoonists and how well they have told the African story right here on the continent. And of course, we are going to be joining Patrick Gathara, who is also a writer and cartoonist. Patrick, if you can hear me, thank you so much for joining us. He's joining us, by the way, from Atlanta, Georgia, where he is attending, is it a summit? Thank you so much for joining us, Gathara. And we are talking caricatures as well. And you're one of the cartoonists we have in Kenya. But do you think your work has earned you the recognition that probably you wouldn't have had if you were in another profession?
Thanks for having me. I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, I've been in the U.S. attending two events. First was a convention of the Cartoonist Rights International Network, which looks after cartoonists' interests and rights, and especially those who are oppressed by governments. And also attending an association of American Editorial Cartoonists conference as well. In terms of recognition for cartoonists, I think, I mean, lots more could be done to recognize what they're doing. I think cartoonists have contributed quite a lot. I mean, if you go back to the days of Terry Hurst, and we still have Mado and Gado and the rest. They've given quite a lot to the country. I helped push for both democracy and independence and stuff. And I don't think they've come close to being recognized for that work. At least not in the way probably some others in civil society and in the media have been. And I think cartoonists have been acknowledged for the role that they have played in exposing the iniquities of government and helping Kenyans to actually confront
All right.
those power.
Okay. Do you think that maybe when it comes to media awards, cartoonists have been left out?
Well, pretty much, my opinion is yes. In a sense, they have been. I mean, we do have some awards within both the Kenyan, I think the Media Council Awards, which recognize best cartoonists, but they're few and far between. I think we have many more cartoonists who are doing pretty good work, whose work deserves wider recognition. But I'd also quickly add that we do, in general in Kenya, we see the work of very few cartoonists. The vast majority of those who are drawing today and doodling and critiquing simply don't have spaces within which to put out their work, so they actually don't get seen. One of the things that we've been doing with the Association of East African Cartoonists is to try to create spaces for this, both online and offline, through exhibitions and through creating web spaces where they can show this. But I think the more we can encourage and build a culture where we can expose them, the more the society will start appreciating what they actually do.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick Gathara. We appreciate that. Patrick joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, where he is attending an event, is also putting into perspective cartoonists, not just in Africa, but around the world. Let's now take a look at what Kenyans on the streets of Nairobi thought about taking up the profession as a cartoonist, and also what they make out of the satire that is put out by cartoonists. Take a look.
I'm joined with Isaac, and I want to know, does he agree? Would you ever take cartoon drawing as a full-time profession?
No, I doubt I would. Maybe as a hobby, but not as a full-time profession. Yeah. It seems like it's more like you really need to go into it, like things you need to dedicate yourself towards. So as a hobby, maybe I'll like just draw a few comics here and there and dive into it. But since it looks like it's something you need to have a more deeper understanding of the politicians and the country itself to actually dabble with.
The cartoons on the newspaper, do you ever think that they portray sarcasm in the right way?
Yeah, I love them, but you know, sometimes they are just too, like, what can I say? They exaggerate so much, yeah.
Actually, they are, maybe, what I can say, maybe they are somehow realistic, but they are not real, yeah. Some of that, they are just fiction, something like that.
Would you ever do that?
Yeah, actually, I think that's one of the things I actually look forward to while I'm reading a newspaper. And it's good to see humor being put to good use, because I actually think what is depicted in those cartoons is actually what happens. And yeah, it's a pretty fun way to get the politicians to know what's going on, because it seems they do not get when people actually talk to them straight about what's really going on. So if you use cartoon and humor, maybe then they get it. Maybe they just have one funny bone that.
I take it up as a profession because it brings it gives out the seriousness. It removes the seriousness of a story into humor, into satire, something that you can smile about. It can be a bad story, but you know, when you look at the cartoon, it brings that humor side of a new story.
And well, there you go. I think I would like to hear the views of our cartoonists in studio and what exactly they thought about that. The first person actually said he wouldn't think of it as a profession. How does that make you feel?
Well, I mean, I don't think he has seen my Cadillac. Anyway, one thing that has been a challenge in this, in our business, is the size of the media.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's rather tiny. I mean, today, obviously, there are several cartoonists per newspaper, but there's still just so much that each media house can take.
All right.
Yes, yes.
Vic, what do you think?
Yeah, he's wrong, obviously. It's a serious profession. We are serious people. We articulate serious issues. We evoke reactions. We bring about discussions. I think we feel a space that is very important in public debate.
All right.
Yes.
Gams, what we're seeing right here on our wall is one of your pieces. What exactly do you think of the work that you do, especially at a time maybe when you're so pissed off about certain events in the country and you want to bring that out in, say, form of a caricature? Do you sometimes let rage take over your work when you are doing it, or you have to think objectively when coming up with a work?
Of course, you have to be objective, and like there's one I think a fan who said that we take hard news we make it then soft using humor. I think that's what we do. Yeah.
Okay, all right, and this is also one of your pieces, and this was, I think, paying tribute to Chinua Achebe?
Yes, that was just a caricature tribute for Chinua Achebe when he passed. In his books, I loved his books, and I love his books. He used to make quotes, writings about death. It's like he foresaw, the way somebody will die. That's one of the quotes.
Okay, let's take a look at another done by Gams, and I think this is the same one that we are looking at. But anyway, in this day and age when we are seeing the digital age taking over, everybody is having their work online. How are you as cartoonists as well trying to make sure you get on with the program when it comes to moving on to the digital space? How are you trying to remain relevant in this space, Gams?
Of course, I think with the digital, the merrier for us. Given that the newspaper the space is so limited. So I think with the digital, now you can do, there's animation, you can do cartoons for television, then everybody has a phone, you can do, there are apps you can use so that you don't have to have your cartoon published in the newspaper. You can have your own site, have them read by the public.
Okay. All right, and Victor, let me come to you as well. You have a website called cartoonmovements.com.org.
Yeah, I'm part of, I'm a member of Cartoon Movement. It's a global cartooning website that has cartoonists from all over the world. And they publish our work and they pay for the work. So what it does, just suppose what you're saying, is that the frontier has opened up, because then you get paid for published work outside print. So I mean, there's more space.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's now hear the views of one of the editors, the deputy editor for The Independent in South Africa, to hear what he's saying about cartoonists as well in South Africa. Just take a look.
Done a splendid job across the continent, and they have been on top of all the major developments and stories on the continent. They've been very underrated in a lot of cases. But if you look at South Africa, for instance, I think Jonathan Shapiro, who's popularly known as Zapiro, has done a wonderful job for 21 years of democracy in South Africa. He has pushed the limits and the boundaries of press freedom and freedom of expression. His cartoons are provocative. He's done a wonderful job. President Jacob Zuma at some stage sued him, but then withdrew that lawsuit. It shows you how close he gets to the seat of power. You also look at Zimbabwe, where freedom of expression and press freedom are under threat. A guy like Tony Namate, for instance, has done a wonderful job for many, many years since independence. He has told the story of the decline of the Zimbabwean economy, the socio-political issues in that country, the crisis that we've seen. All of it, Tony Namate has done it. And then if you look at the African Independent, where I work, our cartoonist Wilson Mkobozi is doing a wonderful job telling the African story, looking at which issues are big on the continent, and his themes speak to the African story. And I think cartoonists in this country have done a wonderful job. I would say Mkobozi, Namate and Zapiro are my top 3 cartoonists in SADC, in the Southern African Development Community region. And I think they've done a wonderful job in telling the African story.
And those are the views of the deputy editor at The Independent that is in South Africa, and that is the African Independent that is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Japhet Nkube, right there, speaking to us and giving us his views on the South African cartoonists. And one of his favorite is Sapiro. And I think it's one of Gum's favorite, and Mado as well. Of course. Yeah, and this is one of Celeste's caricatures. Celeste is the only female cartoonist that we know of, at least in the East African space. Is it the East African or the African space?
Well, okay, safely we can say Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah, but generally East Africa.
Yes, and that is her work. But as a female cartoonist, what do you think of her, especially now knowing that she's dominating your space as male cartoonists?
No, we don't feel that way. Indeed, we invited her into our space.
Yeah.
Because it was crowded by us, us women. Yeah. So we nurtured her. I mean, we were in touch with her ever since school.
Yes.
And she's proven herself. She's very good. I mean, she's observed. I mean, she's quite an observer and an analyst. She just captures everything the way we do. So there's nothing really about her. I wouldn't really find it odd or something smashing that, oh, Celestine is a lady. I think the only problem that has been here in this country that I know for sure is that other ladies have shied away, but they can compete with us. They can even probably beat us.
Yeah. Yeah. Vic, what do you think about Celeste's work?
No, I look at her differently. I look at her as a cartoonist first, then a lady afterwards, because in that small box, we're just concerned with the idea, how it's executed, you know. And obviously, she's done very well for herself. We have to acknowledge that.
Okay. Yep. And Gams, what do you think of Celestine?
Yeah, okay. Like they've said, it's only that the physical attributes. She's a lady to us, but she's a cartoonist like just us. Yeah, that's how we see her. We see her professionally.
You just see her as a cartoonist, yes. So it doesn't matter whether she's female.
Yes.
And I think her work as well is very exemplary. When you look at her work, you actually wouldn't tell. Today I was having a conversation with a graphics designer, and he didn't know that Celeste was a female cartoonist. So he was shocked. But now, we don't have much time, but I'd like to know from you, are there causes that you're passionate about and that you put into your work very passionately? Gums, I'll start with you.
Of course. We are all politicians in the fact that we do vote, you're a voter. So I think we contribute to our democracy. That's our contribution. We do shape the way politics go, though not directly as politicians, but through drawings. We think we educate Wanjiko on issues that politicians try to hide. Yeah.
Okay. And Vic Ndula, what do you think about? Are there certain causes, maybe wildlife, that you're passionate about and that you always bring out that is not necessarily in the space where you work, but maybe on the blogs or the website where you do contribute as well?
My passionate topics would be two, probably African leaders. I find them a very interesting, strange breed. Secondly is the effect and aftermath of probably their bad leadership, and that is sometimes the issue of humans, humanity, refugees. I like to talk about them because it's an issue that people don't talk much about, and they don't highlight. We are so stuck in politics, sometimes it can get really sickening. So there's the aspect of humanity where we can use our cartoons probably for the greater good.
All right.
Yes.
And Mado, as the veteran cartoonist that we have today, what is the future of cartoonists and caricatures in general, looking at the broader African perspective?
That's going to be here for a very long while. I mean, this kind of cartoon commentary is not going to go away, even with the decline of readership. I mean, when we talk about print, Obviously, we are moving elsewhere. I mean, to the digital platforms, as my colleagues have said. But what's going to happen is that we are definitely here to stay. You know, it's a natural thing. I mean, it's not that cartoons and cartoon commentary was forced upon the people. It's always been there from the caveman days.
From the caveman days.
Yes, yes,
and so it's still going to remain relevant
it's
in
not going
days to
anywhere.
come.
Yes, yes.
All right, I really do appreciate the time taken to come here and share your views regarding caricatures and cartoons across the African continent and how well we tell the African story through these caricatures. And it's very clear that cartoonists will remain relevant even years to come. In fact, there's a Nigerian cartoonist who is like more of compiling all the cartoons from the 1800s up until today. So, you know, more of like an encyclopedia of cartoons is what he's trying to put together. And I think that is what we need to tell our own African story through caricatures. Thank you all for watching. In studio, I've hosted Gams and Vic Ndula, as well as Mado. And on Skype, we did speak to Patrick Gathara, who joined us from the US, and also Jean Regis Nduimana, who joined us from Bujumbura in Burundi. Thank you all so much for your contributions. Also to the African Independence Deputy Editor from South Africa, thank you for your contributions. We do appreciate that. And to Zinzi as well, who went to the streets of Nairobi to get us those views from Kenyans. Thank you all so much. And now we'll leave you with a video. Okay. Thank you all for watching. My name is Doreen Biira. Keep your views coming through Africa Speaks.